Welcome to the Lean Body Mind Podcast. This is the first, I think, really official Lean Body Mind video podcast. My name is Steve, you probably knew that already, and I will be your host and companion on this channel, and at some point I hope to come up with a clever tagline, but I'm not there yet. So today for the podcast, I've got my list of notes, I've got a pen, I've got my coffee, I've got some books, got my iPhone, pretty much everything I think I need for reference for this podcast. The first thing I want to do is give an update on the channel. You know, the goal right now is really to hit that 4,000 hours of total view time so that I can monetize the channel. At that point, then I'm really looking forward to getting into some short form videos and animations and explainer videos, all the things I've talked about in our previous chats. At the moment, we are at 2,000 hours. My hope is that before the end of July, we can get to the 4,000 hour mark. Now, I have had some of my viewers comment that they've seen ads on these videos already and wanted to know, does that mean that, am I monetized? Nope. It means that YouTube is exercising their right to place ads on any videos they want. So right now, they're getting 100% of the ad revenue. I'm getting 0%. Did the math for you, just in case it's early in the morning where you're watching. So we got that going on. Another thing that I think, I'm still researching it to see if it'll work and if it will count towards view hours, is doing a live stream. Because I could knock out a half hour, hour-long live stream, and that would probably boost up the views or boost up the hours quite a bit. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword though. I did this once back on SeriousKeto, and just a public, open to anybody sort of live stream. And there was some fairly bad behavior in the comments section. I don't know that I would expect that out of this group here, because you're all sort of early adopters and you knew what you were getting into when you came over to Lean Body Mind. The other challenge with it is monitoring the comments. So comments, when you get hundreds of people or 1,000 people or however many I might hope to have on a live stream, it's very hard as they scroll by. So I would almost need an assistant. Perhaps Courtney would help out, and she could be reading questions and saying, Shelly asks such and such, and then I would respond with whatever my answer is. So I'm looking into that. The other possibility is super chat, and I think that is basically a live stream, but you have to pay some amount to make a comment. I don't know. To me, that seems, some people really, they swear by it. But to me, it seems a little bit, greedy, I guess. A very much a pay for play sort of thing that I find a little bit distasteful. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. If you think something like that would be cool, let me know, and I'll look at doing either a live stream or a super chat. And I will put a check mark next to that. In the background, well, first off, it's finally a decent day for an outdoor shooting video here in Wisconsin. Generally, I'm either fighting too much direct sunlight or too much heat or too much wind, or it's raining or it's cold, or one of my neighbors is making a ton of noise with a leaf blower or power washer or tractor mower or something like that. So today it's actually in the mid 60s. It's cloudy, which most photographers will agree is the best conditions to shoot outdoors in, and very little wind. Hopefully very little wind, because I don't have the little foamy thing on my lapel mic to block the wind. So in the background, there's the garden. You might be able to see a little bit. There's my compost tumbler. It's I love composting. I just think it's great turning waste into not waste, turning it into food for my garden. And that's going to be one of the topics that I cover eventually in this channel, is just how to avoid throwing things away. Anytime I can repurpose something, it just makes me feel good. And I know that probably on a global scheme, it's minuscule what I'm doing, but it makes me feel good. And I think if more people did it and we just put a little bit less stuff into landfills, it's certainly not hurting the planet. But I am working on the gardening video. I think I probably have enough footage both me working in the garden talking as well as some B-roll that I can assemble something. I just need to figure out how to get all the pieces to fit properly, and then I'm going to have to do a fair amount of voiceover work on it, I think. One of the things I've realized in this channel especially, but even more so combining it with Serious Keto, is just how much work goes into making a channel. It is so incredibly time consuming. I really feel at the moment like I've got 2 full-time jobs, and the stress of it reminds me a little bit of back in my days working at GE. So at GE, I'm not going to say I never, I think twice maybe over the course of 20 years with GE, I took a vacation that was a full week or longer. Other than that, it was mostly just, I would take a day here, a day there. I would tack an extra day onto a holiday weekend to turn a 3-day weekend into a 4-day weekend. But at GE, no one really picked up the work for you. When you were gone, work was piling up. And when you came back, you had, oops, almost knocked over my coffee. That would have been just a horrible, horrible thing. When you came back, all that work was still there for you to do. So it was almost impossible not to stress out while you were on a vacation. That thing that should be relaxing was actually stressing you out. And there were a number of different vacation jokes at GE, like, what do you call a GE vacation? Only being on 3 conference calls per day. That's really what it was like. Nobody at GE that I knew went on vacation and didn't take their laptop with them so that they could, at the very least, clear out some emails and not have to deal with that when they got back. But the reason I'm telling you this is because we went to pick up Courtney down in Mississippi, and we were gone for 3 days, and I started feeling that same sort of GE feeling. Now, it's a better type of stress than that GE stress because I'm working for myself. And really, I guess, the only person I need to please is myself. I know I got to please all of you, and so that you keep coming back and keep watching, but I think I can be a little bit easier on myself because I think all of you are more understanding that real life sometimes gets in the way. GE, they weren't so understanding of that. Speaking of Courtney, I'm going to try and incorporate her into a couple of the videos that we do before she heads back to school. One of which is something that I've already done, so I'm going to have to recreate, and it's a little bit of visual management and what else would I call it? Budget? Let me think about this. So the categories that it would fit into, from a continuous improvement or lean standpoint, it's definitely waste elimination. So at some point we'll talk about the 7 types of waste. Some people argue that there's an 8th type of waste. I would agree in business terms, the waste of people. And that, I don't mean like a mafia, like BAP, wasting somebody. I mean misusing people, taking away their spirit and their happiness at work and just making them miserable, not utilizing the best of them. So that's the 8th type of waste. I'll talk about the other 7 in a future video. One of which is scrap. And to me, when you're throwing away food, you're letting food go bad, that's scrap. And that's a horrible, horrible type of waste. I think I've mentioned it in some other videos, at least on Serious Keto. I had the opportunity to travel to a lot of developing nations. Well, not a lot, a few. I've been to Taiwan, I've been to various areas in China and India and the Caribbean. And when you see just what poverty really looks like, the notion of throwing away food is just horrible. And I also hearken back then to growing up in the 70s and being told, you got to clean your plate. There's children starving in China. And I don't think that should be an excuse to overeat, but I think it is a reason to really manage your food and sort of sequence meals in such a way that it eliminates waste, planning leftover days or planning uses specifically for leftovers. And what I've done is I've created this weekly calendar board where we plan out our meals. And we can look at sort of the sequence of meals, we plan them out over the course of an entire week, and that helps dictate our shopping list, so we're buying based on planned consumption rather than buying based on a whim. I think a potential aspect that I could add to this board is also having some sort of a floater type day to handle sales. So if you go out to the grocery store and you've got your list for the 4 or 5 specific meals that you plan on for a week, could you have a couple of like I said, floater days? I don't know if there's a better word for it, where you go out and you see, oh, such and such tenderloin is on sale, super cheap. We got to get some tenderloin. Normally what happens is my wife will see something on sale and she'll buy it strictly because it's on sale without having a specific plan for it, and then often it winds up going bad before we get to it, and then it's waste, and it doesn't really matter that it was on sale. It didn't save me any money, it cost me money because we threw it away. Anyhow, short story long, one of the first videos that Courtney will be in, and probably before the end of this month, will recreate the meal calendar. And like I said, it falls into visual management, falls into waste management, falls into budget. I think those are the main categories for it. And I think it's also a good thing too, because we can involve the entire family looking through cookbooks and just sort of having fun planning what our meals are going to be like for the week. So look forward to that. I've had a few comments from people talking about how they're doing continuous improvement at work and they look forward to taking some of this and using it at work. I've had some people that have felt maybe confused about what the channel is going to be about. Like, this is a business channel or a manufacturing channel. So let me clarify kind of both of those things. First off, as I talk about continuous improvement, change management, some of these various topics around Lean, Six Sigma, Lean Startup, innovation, personal productivity, all of these things, I will talk about them a little bit in terms of business and where they got their start, but then I really want the focus to be on us, on ourselves and the practical application in our day-to-day life of some of these tools. If I tell you how to do this on an assembly line, that may or may not be applicable to you. Maybe you work on an assembly line and it's great. So you may be able to make that metaphorical leap and say, well, my assembly line in the kitchen is sort of the order of things that I'm making pancakes in or with. That didn't come out real clearly, but I think you get the gist. Or maybe your assembly line is just your day-to-day routine. How do I go through from getting up in the morning to being at work? That's sort of a process. It's an assembly line. But I don't want to get real hung up on the manufacturing stuff. I want us to be thinking about how does this become immediately applicable and valuable in our day-to-day lives. Now the cool thing is, if you understand how to apply these things in your day-to-day life, and then at your business they start using continuous improvement in any of its forms, you're going to have an anchor. You're going to have something that you can say, oh, I get this. This is like when Steve said, here's how we make pancakes. So hopefully it will be helpful both from a business standpoint if you use it in your business, or who knows, maybe you decide now that you kind of get it that you can start implementing some of these things where you work. You can be the leader. Now over on the Serious Keto, Not So Serious Keto Video Podcast, I had talked about some books that I'm reading, and somebody suggested that maybe that would be a good topic for the Lean Body Mind podcast. And I agree. I think whether we do it as something where I say, here's a book that I'm starting and we can all sort of read it together and share our thoughts when I eventually get to the review, or you can just wait for my review. But to that end, let me tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm just about finished with this book, Breathe by James Nestor. Somebody had suggested this to me after I mentioned the Wim Hof breathing. And I enjoy this book. I'll give the full review probably in the next podcast. I'm literally at the tail end. I'm on the appendix where it sort of rehashes the various breathing exercises that it talks about. But I really like Nestor's writing style. He writes nonfiction in a way that good fiction is written in. It's very descriptive. It's not dry at all. He also jumps around a bit in terms of timelines. So he'll be telling you what's going on currently, and then he'll jump to something historical, some sort of reference to give it more context. Anyhow, I'll give more information on that probably in the next podcast after I've completely finished it. In terms of audiobooks, what I'm listening to as I do my walks, when I try to do my walks daily when the weather is nice, boy, I sure put a lot of asterisks next to that. But it's Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. I had read or listened to Dan Harris's first book, 10% Happier, which is less a book about meditation and more of a book about him finding meditation. So Dan Harris, he was an ABC reporter. I think he's on Good Morning America weekends. And so much of that book is really just, it's more of an autobiography. And I don't think anybody is going to read or listen to that and come away with much of an understanding of meditation. Whereas this book is probably, 50% autobiography post 10% Happier and 50% more understanding what meditation is all about. How would I describe it? He overcomes a lot of the objections that people have to meditation, whether that's from a time standpoint or it just seems weird, or some people think that it's specifically religious. It's really more of a practice. It's like, exercise. And it's exercise for your brain and for your spirit. And I've got about, how much do I have left on this? 3 hours and 15 minutes left on that. So probably another 4 days of walking and I'll be finished with that. Dan Harris, he's got a good voice. He's a broadcaster, so there's that. What else? His sense of humor, he's smart. He's smart, he's got a good sense of humor, not laugh out loud sort of sense of humor, but just sort of smile inside sense of humor. So once I'm finished with that, I will give my review of that. So next up on the book list, in terms of hardcover or physical books, a friend of mine lent me this, Living with a Seal. That might be interesting. And Lights Out. Pride, Delusion, and the Fall of General Electric. So this is something that I kind of witnessed firsthand, and I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this. Whether I'm going to feel somewhat vindicated, against the company that's laid me off a couple of times, or whether it's going to make me sad, just because I was part of it. I was part of the delusional, cult-like following of the General. For audiobooks, scrolling through the list here, probably the next two that are on my list are Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell. Those are two of the next ones on my list. I've got 109 titles in my Audible queue. I really stocked up back when I was an Audible subscriber. I'm not an Audible subscriber anymore just because I hit the point where there's no way. If I listen to probably my entire Audible library for the rest of my life, I don't know that I'll finish it. So plenty of audiobooks in the queue for me. So besides the videos that I'm working on and the books that I'm reading, the other thing that I desperately need to try and make more time for is working with some of the software that I'm going to be using in these videos going ahead. So both OBS, which I think should be fairly easy. I should just make a plan this weekend to sit down with OBS and try some video streaming or video capture. So run through some of my older PowerPoints and do some voiceover work, see if it makes sense to have a picture of me down in the corner of the screen, here or up here, one of these places, so that you see me as I'm talking, or if that doesn't add anything to it. And then the more complicated thing is working with Explaindio, which is this explainer software. It's fairly simple animation. Some of it is, where you see the hand, like drawing stuff. I think that could be good. It's not the best hand drawing software. I think the best is probably Doodly. But Doodly I had purchased and tried out, and they make you pay for so many different add-ons if you really want to have a full feature-rich piece of software. So I bailed on that, went with Explaindio, thought it might be a little bit easier. If any of you have worked with any explainer software, especially Explaindio, and have any tips, tricks, advice, anything like that, I would love to hear it. In closing though, I'm going to say what I'll probably say in every one of these videos, which is thank you. I am so just thrilled. I've got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. The fact that all of you came over from Serious Keto because you felt that I had something to offer. And That really does mean a lot to me, as does your patience, as I try and get this thing up and running. Because, as I said earlier, I sort of underestimated the amount of work and time that it would take. When I first started Serious Keto, there was no real pressure on me. I was still getting a severance from GE. I was making some money on the side doing my consulting business, and just time wasn't a big stress factor for me. But now running Serious Keto and having a regular cadence of videos that I need to get out, and I get hung up on a lot of the metrics, on the views, the view hours, the likes, the dislikes, and especially revenue, because this is what pays the bills for me, or pays some of the bills for me, and then money out of my savings pays the rest of the bills for me. So there is that sort of pressure that I'm feeling as I'm getting this channel up that I didn't have when I was creating Serious Keto initially. But it strikes me, based on the comments that so many of you have left, that you understand that family is important, that real life gets in the way sometimes, and I thank you. I thank you for your understanding, and I thank you for your support, and I thank you for watching this video. We'll see you soon.